The Iranian Revolution of 1979 is not just history. It is a living force that still shapes global politics, energy markets, military conflicts, and the balance of power in the Middle East. Iran was once a nation openly aligned with Western values, rich in oil, culture, and ancient heritage. Then, almost overnight, it transformed into something entirely different. What emerged from the heart of Iranian society was not simply a new government, but a revolutionary system that would challenge the global order for decades. This is the story of how Iran became the country the world no longer recognizes. To understand Iran's revolution, we must return to the early 20th century, when Iran became a pillar of the British Empire's energy strategy. Oil wealth flowed endlessly from Iranian soil, yet almost none of it reached Iranian hands. In 1901, Britain secured control over Iranian oil for a fraction of its value, creating what would later become British Petroleum. By 1908, massive discoveries turned Iran into a fuel source for empire, while its people lived in poverty. Iranian workers earned cents a day in oil fields like Abadan, while British managers enjoyed luxury clubs, pools, and gardens. This imbalance planted a deep resentment that would never disappear. Discontent turned into chaos. Iran fractured into civil war, with monarchists, constitutionalists, tribal forces, criminals, and socialist movements tearing the country apart. Order returned not through democracy, but through military force. Reza Shah Pahlavi rose from the ranks, crowned himself king, and launched an ambitious project to modernize Iran. He weakened religious authority, built infrastructure, centralized power, and tried to reduce foreign influence by aligning with Germany. For a brief moment, Iran seemed to be standing on its own feet. That independence did not last. In 1941, despite declaring neutrality, Iran was invaded simultaneously by Britain and the Soviet Union. The reason was simple. Iran's geography and oil were too valuable to risk falling outside Allied control during World War II. Within days, Reza Shah was removed. His son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was installed with Western backing. From that moment on, Iran's sovereignty existed largely on paper. In 1951, Iran attempted something revolutionary, reclaiming control of its own oil. Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized the industry, challenging British and American interests. The response was swift and decisive. In 1953, the CIA and MI6 orchestrated a coup, bribing politicians, clerics, and military officers to overthrow Iran's democratic government. The Shah returned as an authoritarian ruler. For many Iranians, this moment proved one thing beyond doubt. Western powers would never allow Iran true independence. By the 1970s, Iran looked modern on the surface. Tehran mirrored Western capitals. Women worked, studied, and dressed freely. Oil money poured in. But beneath the surface, inequality and repression deepened. Rural regions remained poor. Political dissent was crushed by Savak, the Shah's secret police, trained and funded by the United States. Torture, surveillance, and fear became tools of stability. The Shah's White Revolution modernized the economy, but alienated religious and traditional segments of society. From exile in France, a cleric named Ruhollah Khomeini found a weapon more powerful than guns: cassette tapes. His sermons spread secretly through mosques and homes, calling for Islamic law and the overthrow of the Shah. By 1978, protests unified students, merchants, clerics, and the poor. What began as demonstrations turned into a nationwide uprising. Iran was no longer controllable. On September 8, 1978, thousands gathered in Tehran's Jaleh Square. Martial law had been declared, but the crowd refused to disperse. Soldiers opened fire. Panic, blood, and chaos followed. Black Friday killed dozens, possibly hundreds. Any chance of reconciliation died in that square. From that moment on, the Shah's regime was finished. By early 1979, strikes crippled the oil industry. The economy collapsed, the military fractured. On January 16th, the Shah fled Iran. 2 weeks later, Khomeini returned to a hero's welcome. Within months, a referendum abolished the monarchy. The Islamic Republic of Iran was born. The revolution devoured its own. Former officials were executed, secular allies were sidelined. Religious law reshaped daily life. The veil became mandatory. Political opposition vanished. Iran had traded monarchy for theocracy, replacing one form of authoritarianism with another, this time sanctified by religion. In November 1979, Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. Taking 52 Americans hostage for 444 days. The crisis shattered U.S.-Iran relations permanently. It defined Iran as a global antagonist and locked both nations into decades of hostility that still shape today's conflicts. Everything we see today, Iran's nuclear ambitions, its influence in Lebanon and Syria, its confrontation with Israel and the United States, traces back to 1979. The revolution did not end. It became a permanent state of resistance. Iran is no longer just a country, it is an idea, and one that continues to reshape the world.